The sun had just dipped below the horizon, leaving the village of Nkuzi bathed in twilight, but the air was far from peaceful. Villagers gathered at the square, watching as Chief Okoye confronted Omalicha with anger burning in his eyes. "You played with my heart, Omalicha," he bellowed, his fists clenched at his sides. "I gave you everything, my time, my gifts, and my promises, and now you throw it all away." Omalicha stood quietly, her expression calm but distant. The chief had indeed tried to win her love, bringing her the finest woven cloth, beads, and handcrafted ornaments. At first, Omalicha had accepted them, and for a moment it seemed as though she welcomed his affection. But just when the chief believed she might be his, Omalicha turned him away. "I never meant to hurt you," Omalicha said softly, but her words carried little emotion. "Why, Omalicha? Why do you do this to every man who loves you?" Chief Okoye demanded, his voice thick with pain. The villagers whispered among themselves, exchanging knowing glances. This wasn't the first time Omalicha had broken a man's heart, and everyone knew it wouldn't be the last. "She's cursed," someone whispered. "Or bewitched," another muttered. The chief shook his head and stormed off, his heart shattered. As he left, the villagers buzzed with questions. Why did Omalicha keep breaking hearts? What secret was she hiding? Omalicha lowered her gaze, hiding the sadness in her eyes. They would never understand the truth, the curse she carried from the river, the curse that made her keep every man at arm's length. Long ago, Omalicha wasn't a woman. She had been a mermaid, swimming freely in the cool waters of the great river near Nkuzi. The river was her home, and she loved it, loved the way the water sparkled under the sun and how the current carried her effortlessly. But she longed for something more. Omalicha often watched the humans from the riverbank. She saw their laughter, their dances, and the joy they shared. She wanted to be part of their world. She wanted to walk on land, dance under the moon, and know what it felt like to fall in love. One night, Omalicha swam deep into the river, seeking out the ancient spirit Mama Nwando, who ruled over the waters. The spirit appeared, her voice soft but powerful, like the rush of the river. "You wish to walk on land, child?" Mama Nwando asked. "Yes," Omalicha whispered eagerly. "I want to live among the humans." Mama Nwando smiled, but there was a warning in her eyes. "I can grant your wish, but there is a price. You must never fall in love. If you do, your true self will be revealed, and you will be imprisoned forever." Without thinking, Omalicha agreed. The spirit touched her forehead, and her tail disappeared, replaced by human legs. Omalicha emerged from the river as a woman, her beauty unmatched by any mortal. But now, as she lived among humans, the price of her wish weighed heavily on her. Every man who came close to her fell in love with her, and each time she had no choice but to break their hearts, because if she let herself love, her secret would be exposed, and the curse would claim her. Not long after Chief Okoye's heartbreak, Okeke, the bravest warrior in Nkuzi, decided to try and win Omalicha's heart. He believed his strength and courage would set him apart from the other men. "I do not need gifts to show my love," Okeke told Omalicha proudly. "I will prove myself with my actions." He spent his days telling her stories of his battles, how he had fought wild animals and defended the village from invaders. Omalicha listened, smiling softly as he spoke. For a time, Okeke believed he had found a way into her heart. The villagers watched with eager eyes, hoping that Okeke might succeed. "If anyone can win her love, it will be Okeke," they whispered. "He is the strongest man in the village." As the days passed, Okeke's hope grew. He imagined himself standing beside Omalicha, proud and victorious, with her love as his reward. But Omalicha knew how this story would end. The curse would not allow her to love him, no matter how brave or strong he was. One evening as they sat by the river, Okeke looked into Omalicha's eyes and said, "I care for you, Omalicha. I wish to be with you." Omalicha's heart ached, but she forced herself to smile. "I cannot be with you, Okeke," she whispered. It is not meant to be." Okeki stared at her, his heart breaking. "Why?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. But Omalicha had no answer. With a heavy heart, Okeki walked away, leaving Omalicha alone by the river. Another heart broken, another man left wondering why. After Okeki's rejection, Kelechi, a wealthy merchant, came to the village, determined to win Omalicha's love. Kelechi believed that his riches would succeed where strength had failed. He approached Omalicha with confidence, presenting her with gifts, golden necklaces, silk from distant lands, and jars of fragrant oils. "These are just the beginning," Kelechi said with a charming smile. "With me you will have everything you desire." Omalicha accepted the gifts with a polite smile, and for a while, Kelechi believed he had won her favor. He boasted to the other men, confident that Omalicha would soon be his. "She wears the clothes I gave her," Kelechi said proudly to a friend. "Surely her heart will follow." But as the days passed, Omalicha felt the curse pressing down on her. The longer she stayed close to Kelechi, the heavier her heart became. She knew she could not let this go on longer. One evening, Omalicha returned the gifts to Kelechi. "I cannot love you," she said quietly. Kelechi stared at her in disbelief. "But you accepted everything I gave you." "It was never about the gifts," Omalicha whispered. "I am sorry, Kelechi." Heartbroken and humiliated, Kelechi left the village, wondering what he had done wrong. With each rejection, the village people grew more suspicious. Elder Udo, a man with deep wrinkles and knowing eyes, and the other elders were talking in his hut one evening. They sat in a circle, the flickering fire casting shadows on their faces. "This is not normal," Udo muttered. "No man's heart is safe around her. She breaks them all, one by one." The other elders nodded. "She rejected Chief Okoye, our strongest warrior, and even Kelechi, with all his wealth," one elder added. "What kind of woman cannot be swayed by gifts, strength, or honor?" Elder Udo tapped his cane on the ground thoughtfully. "Perhaps Omalicha is not just a woman," he said slowly. "There are old stories, spirits that take human form and charm men with beauty, only to leave them heartbroken." The elders exchanged uneasy glances. "Could she be one of them?" an elder whispered. "We must watch her closely," Udo said, leaning forward. "If she's not what she seems, we must act before it's too late." Outside, the wind stirred the leaves, and the river whispered in the night. Omalicha sat on the riverbank, gazing into the water. She felt the weight of the people's eyes on her, even though no one was near. They suspected something. They always did. But Omalicha knew they could never understand her truth. Not long after Kelechi left the village, Amadi, the best hunter in Nkuzi, decided it was his turn. Amadi was known for his skill with a spear and his unmatched courage. He believed that Omalicha, like a wild animal, only needed the right hunter to tame her. "No woman has ever resisted me," Amadi boasted to some of his friends one evening. "She will be no different." He approached Omalicha with a confident grin, telling her tales of the beasts he had hunted and the dangers he had faced in the wilderness. "I have tamed creatures 10 times fiercer than you," he said as a joke, but his chest is puffed with pride. "Winning your heart will be my greatest victory." Omalicha smiled softly. She listened to his stories and even laughed at his jokes. For a brief moment, Amadi thought he had succeeded, but Omalicha felt the familiar ache deep inside. She knew how this would end, just like all the others. One evening, Amadi grew bold. "Omalicha," he said, stepping closer. "I want you to be mine." Omalicha's smile faded. "I cannot be with you, Amadi," she whispered. Amadi's grin disappeared. "Why? You laughed at my stories. You smiled at me. Why do you turn me away?" Omalicha looked down, her heart heavy. "I am sorry," she said quietly. Amadi clenched his fists in anger. "You play with our hearts," he hissed. "You are no better than a trickster spirit." He stormed off into the night, humiliated and furious. The villagers watched in silence as another heart was left broken. Few days later, the night of the Moonlight Festival arrived, and the village of Nkuzi glowed with lanterns and laughter. This festival was always held by the riverbank, a tradition passed down for generations. The villagers believed the river spirits blessed those who danced under the moonlight by the water. Drums beat steadily as the villagers danced under the open sky, their faces bright with joy. Children ran around, chasing fireflies, while the elders sat nearby, sharing stories and chewing cola nuts. Omalicha stood at the edge of the gathering, her eyes drawn to the shimmering river. The water glistened under the silver light of the full moon, and a strange feeling stirred inside her, a mix of longing and fear. "Come, Omalicha," one of the women called out, waving her over. "Join the dance." With a soft smile, Omalicha stepped into the circle of dancers. The rhythm of the drums pulsed through the air, and she moved gracefully, her feet light on the earth. The villagers watched her in awe, mesmerized by the way she danced, as if the music was part of her soul. As she spun beneath the moonlight, the river responded. The water rippled gently as if greeting her. "She moves like a spirit," whispered one of the elders. Elder Udo narrowed his eyes. Something is not right. The festive mood dimmed slightly as whispers spread through the crowd. But Omalicha kept dancing, her heart heavy. The river seemed to call to her, pulling her closer to the water. She knew the curse was tightening, and soon she would have to make a choice: run away or let the truth consume her. One day a traveller named Obinna arrived in Nkuzi. He was a quiet man, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Unlike the other men, Obinna did not seem interested in Omalicha's beauty. He walked past her without a second glance, carrying a small bundle over his shoulder. Omalicha noticed him immediately. No man had ever ignored her before. It felt strange and intriguing. "Who is he?" the villagers whispered. "He's just a wanderer," one of the men replied. "He won't stay long." But Obinna stayed. He spent his days listening to the stories of the elders, sitting quietly by the fire as they spoke of ancient spirits and forgotten tales. He seemed more interested in something else, like someone on an important mission other than chasing women. Omalicha watched him from a distance, curiosity growing inside her. Why didn't he look at her the way other men did? Why didn't he try to impress her? One afternoon, as the sun cast golden light over the village, Omalicha wandered along the riverbank, her heart weighed down by the curse she carried. The gentle murmur of the river had always brought her peace, but lately, even the water felt heavy with sorrow. Lost in thought, Omalicha found herself sitting on a smooth rock by the river's edge. She glanced to her right and noticed someone sitting quietly beside her. It was Obinna, the stranger who had arrived in Nkuzi only a few days earlier. She hadn't seen him approach, and for a moment they sat in comfortable silence, the only sound the soft lapping of the water against the rocks. Omalicha studied him quietly. He wasn't like the other men, those who had tried to woo her with promises and gifts. Obinna carried no offerings, nor did he look at her with longing or admiration. He seemed content, as if sitting by the river was all he needed. "You are different from the others," Omalicha said at last, her voice soft and thoughtful. Obinna smiled, his gaze still fixed on the flowing river. "I have no need to chase what cannot be caught," he said simply. The words stirred something deep within Omalicha's heart. It wasn't admiration or anything like that. It was a connection, quiet and unfamiliar, and it had nothing to do with her beauty. But with that feeling came danger. Omalicha knew the price of caring for someone. The curse lingered like a shadow in her mind, whispering its warning: if you let your heart care, your secret will be revealed. She turned her gaze back to the water, willing the feeling to disappear. But the presence of Obinna made it impossible. In his quiet company, she felt a warmth she had never known, and that warmth frightened her more than anything. Obinna glanced at her, sensing the shift in her mood, but he didn't speak. Instead, he offered her a calm smile, as if to say, "I see you, but I will not ask more than you are willing to give." Omalicha's heart ached, and she knew then that the curse was stirring, creeping closer with every passing moment. If she stayed too close to Obinna, everything she had fought to keep hidden would come to light, and once that happened, There would be no going back. Despite the strange, unfamiliar feeling stirring in her heart, Omalicha found herself returning to the river, hoping to run into Obinna again. And each time she did, he was there, quiet, thoughtful, and always at ease by the water. Over time, they began spending more moments together, sitting by the river and talking about life, dreams, and the world beyond the village. Obinna never tried to impress her, nor did he ask anything of her. Instead, he asked about her thoughts, her hopes, and the things she longed for most. "What do you dream about, Omalicha?" Obinna asked one evening as they watched the river shimmer under the light of the setting sun. Omalicha hesitated. No one had ever asked her such a thing before. "I dream of freedom," she whispered at last. "Freedom from everything that holds me back." Obinna looked at her thoughtfully. "You seem like someone carrying a heavy burden," he said gently. "You don't have to tell me what it is, but I can see it in your eyes." Omalicha's heart ached. She wanted to tell him everything, to share the secret that weighed on her soul, but the curse hovered over her like a shadow. If she let herself care for him, if she allowed herself to love, the curse would take hold, and her secret would be exposed. Obinna's kindness was a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time, but the closer she got to him, the more dangerous it became. One evening, as they sat together again by the riverbank, Omalicha found herself leaning closer to him. Her heart pounded in her chest, and for a brief moment she forgot about the curse. But then the river whispered her name, and she pulled back quickly. Obinna frowned, sensing her hesitation, but he didn't press her for answers. Omalicha stared into the water, fear and longing swirling inside her. She knew she was standing at the edge of something dangerous, and once she crossed that line, there would be no turning back. As the days passed, Omalicha and Obinna's growing friendship became the subject of gossip in the village. Some villagers believed Omalicha had finally found someone who could win her heart, but others were less hopeful, especially the men she had once rejected. "Obinna is wasting his time," Okiki muttered to a group of men. "She will break his heart, just like she broke mine." The whispers spread quickly, and soon the village was buzzing with rumours. "She's a curse upon this village," one woman said. "No good can come from her presence." The elders gathered again, this time with heavier concerns. "We must act soon," Elder Udo warned. "This bond between her and the stranger will only bring misfortune." But Obinna was unaffected by the talk around him. He enjoyed Omalicha's company and felt a calm in her presence that he couldn't explain. When Omalicha smiled, it felt genuine, not like the smiles she gave others. Still, Omalicha felt the tension building. She could sense the unease in the village, the rising suspicion. The more time she spent with Obinna, the louder the whispers became, and the curse felt closer than ever. One evening, as they sat quietly by the river, Omalicha whispered, "Obinna, you should not stay close to me. It's dangerous." Obinna's gaze softened. "I don't care about danger," he replied. "I care about you." Omalicha's heart ached, but she said nothing more. She knew the curse was creeping closer, and that time was running out. Late one night, Omalicha walked alone to the edge of the river, her heart heavy with fear. The moon shone brightly over the water, casting silver ripples across the surface. As she knelt by the riverbank, the water began to stir, and Mama Nwando appeared, her voice soft but stern. "You are playing with fire, child," the spirit warned. "You are far too close to breaking the pact." Omalicha looked down, her hands trembling. "I do not know what to do," she whispered. "I do not want to hurt him." Mama Nwando's eyes shimmered with sadness. "If you give your heart to him, your secret will be revealed. Your legs will return to fins and you will be imprisoned forever." Tears welled in Omalicha's eyes. But what if he could understand? What if he knew the truth and still loved me? The spirit's voice darkened. "There is no if, child." Omalicha felt a knot tighten in her chest. The choice before her was impossible. She could walk away from Obinna and save them both from the curse, or she could let herself love him and risk losing everything. "Choose wisely, child," Mama Nwando whispered before vanishing into the water. Omalicha stood by the river alone and filled with fear. She knew that the curse would soon reach its breaking point, and when it did, there would be no escape. The village elders had been watching Omalicha closely, and the time had come to act. One afternoon they summoned her to the council hut. The villagers gathered outside, eager to see what would unfold. Omalicha entered the hut, her heart pounding in her chest. Elder Udo sat at the centre, his expression grave. The other elders sat in a circle around him, their eyes sharp with suspicion. "You have brought disorder to our village," Udo began, his voice heavy with authority. "No man can win your heart, and all who try are left broken. Tell us, Omalicha, who are you really?" Omalicha stood silently, her hands folded in front of her. She felt the weight of their stares, the pressure to speak, but the truth was too dangerous to reveal. "I am just a woman," Omalicha whispered. "Nothing more." The elders exchanged glances, unconvinced. "We do not believe you," Elder Udo said. "There is a darkness surrounding you, and we must protect the village from it." Outside, the villagers whispered among themselves. Some believed Omalicha was cursed. Others thought she was hiding something even worse. Omalicha remained still, her heart racing. She knew that if she spoke the truth, the curse would unravel. But she also knew that keeping the secret came at a cost. "You are free to leave," Udo finally said. "But be warned, we are watching." Omalicha left the hut, her heart heavy with dread. She knew that the elders would not stop until they uncovered her secret, and when they did, everything would change. That evening, Omalicha sat by the river with Obinna, her heart heavy with fear and doubt. The sun had set, and the stars glittered above them like tiny lanterns in the sky. Obinna sat close to her, his eyes soft and thoughtful. "Omalicha," he said quietly, "I need to tell you something." Omalicha's heart skipped a beat. She knew what was coming, and she was terrified of hearing it. "I don't care what people say about you," Obinna continued. "I have fallen in love with you." The words hung in the air, as heavy as the night itself. Omalicha's chest tightened, and she felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. She wanted to say the words back, to tell him that she cared for him too, but the curse loomed over her like a shadow, reminding her of what would happen if she let herself love. "You cannot love me," Omalicha whispered, her voice breaking. "It is very dangerous." Obinna frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" Omalicha shook her head, unable to explain. "Please, Obinna, stay away from me. It is better this way." But Obinna reached for her hand, his touch gentle and warm. "I don't believe that," he said softly. "I believe that we are meant to be, no matter what stands in our way." Omalicha pulled her hand away, tears slipping down her cheeks. She knew that the curse was closing in, and that she was running out of time. After her conversation with Obinna, Omalicha wandered back to the river, her heart in turmoil. The cool night breeze whispered through the trees, and the river shimmered under the moonlight. She knelt by the water, staring at her reflection. The woman she saw in the water looked calm on the surface, but beneath that calm was a storm of fear and longing. "I cannot love him," Omalicha whispered to herself. "I cannot break the curse." But deep inside, she knew that her heart had already chosen. She cared for Obinna in a way she had never cared for anyone before, and that made the curse all the more dangerous. As Omalicha sat by the river, the water began to ripple, as if sensing her sorrow. Mama Nwando's voice echoed in her mind. "Love will bring ruin." Omalicha closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. She knew that the only way to protect Obinna was to push him away. But every time she tried, her heart pulled her closer to him. The choice before her was impossible, and no matter what she decided, someone would end up hurt.